Hey, how's it going guys? Welcome back for another TOS video. So we are finally kicking off the Coach Me TOS series, right? So this is going to be the second video of the entire series. So if you guys are not following my Facebook page, so I mentioned that this series is going to be a bi-weekly release on my channel, meaning that there's going to be one video every 2 weeks instead of the usual, ultimate stage. I get to upload them every week and so on. Right, so this series here is going to be a bi-weekly event, a bi-weekly release, right? So in this video, right, or this episode, we're going to take a look at MY Shadowfire here, who have sent in the gameplay. Right, so basically he's at level 238, so in the video he is 237, so I guess he leveled up already, right? And then login days of 419, right? So it's not really a very veteran player, right? 419 days is pretty much 1 year plus kind of login days, right? So level 237, I guess that is gonna be pretty average out, right, based on the number of login days here. Right, so there is an additional note, right? He said, I prefer this video over the last one that he sent in, right? So this stage is significantly harder and fun to play overall. Right, so let's take a look at Shadowfire's team setup, right? So you can see here he's running a Arthur setup. Right, so Arthur, nonetheless, is a very good setup, very good team, right, to go around to play. It's a very fun team setup as well. So we can see we have Arthur here at CD7, so that's max. We have Ieyasu. Right, so Ieyasu, once you see Ieyasu, there's definitely going to be a Huang Zhong. Right, so there is no reason to bring Ieyasu if you don't have Huang Zhong, because you don't get the best out of the damage output. Right, so these two cards pretty much go hand in hand. We have Huang Zhong here, max level, max skill. We have Ieyasu here, max level, max skill, max amelioration as well. Right, so in between we have Nathaniel. Right, so I guess there's going to be some sort of, probably somewhere that you're going to use this, I assume, right? Because Nathaniel is pretty much like a niche pick, right? It's not 100% pick in the Arthur setup, right? Same goes to Hubble. So these two cards, I'm not sure whether you're going to utilize them in this battle or not, right? We're going to see how it goes. But you can see on the right hand side, I actually have myself my personal gameplay, right? So the reason why I do this is because I can give some sort of suggestion to what cards can you substitute, right? So of course I know that you might not have the card, right? So I'm just giving you a few examples whereby you can actually substitute a card, right, which actually buffs up the entire Arthur setup. Right, so in my opinion, I would say that Ieyasu and Huang Zhong is fine, right? In my opinion, I would bring them as well. Right, so Hubble and Nathaniel, right, you can actually give them, you can kind of substitute them out if they don't necessarily, if you don't really use it in this bi-weekly battle, right? Unless you're bringing it for a specific reason, right? So for Hubble and Nathaniel, usually what I would use is Moldy and Magni, right? So definitely a good pick for Arthur. Of course, pretty much not for the convert, but for the second skill, which is, got it, clicked off. Right, second skill, which turns enemy attribute into dark, so that actually buff up Arthur's burst damage, right, during like maybe the mid boss or the final boss stage. Right, so Hubble, right, if you were to slot in Moldy and Magni for Nathaniel, and then maybe for Hubble's slot, you can slot in maybe a Sang. Right, so Sang is a very good candidate for Arthur team, right? So if you guys have Sang, I would strongly recommend you to put Sang in an Arthur setup, right? Why? You can take a look at the active skill, light attack times 1.5 and light human attack times 2, right? Meaning that in the Arthur team, you are basically getting a times 2 buff instead of times 1.5 buff. And the effect stays in play until not all light runes are dissolved, right? Meaning first batch only. Right, so as you guys know, Arthur auto dissolves light runes away, but if you do 4 more combos at the end of the turn, it converts one of the 4 corners into 3 light runes. Right, so 3 light runes meaning 1 combo of light runes, and that is extremely easy to maintain. Right, so you basically do that 1 combo there, and that kind of sustain this Sang's active skill. Right, so a very good addition, right? Sang here. Right, so if you guys probably say like, oh, Pili Puppet, Coliseum, I missed it, and stuff like that. Right, so another example you can slot in would be Yuan Shao. Right, so Yuan Shao here is a Warlock 2 series card. Right, so basically it does the same job as Sang. Right, you can bring both together, but there's probably too much buff in one team. Right, so what I have here is team recovery minus 50%, so you have a bit of a downside for this card here, right? But on the other hand, light attack times 1.5, if team consists of only humans, light attack times 1.3 additionally, right? And then it stays in play until deactivation or defeated. So these are the buff cards that you can slot in for Arthur team to kind of increase Arthur's overall damage output. Right, so as you can see, Shadowfire team here, pretty much, you call Huang Zhong as a buff, right, but he's basically not really, he's indirectly a buff, but it doesn't increase the entire team's damage output, right? So I wouldn't consider Huang Zhong as a buff, right? So basically, Nathaniel there is to give you 3 rolls. Yes, more runes means more attack, but that's only 1 turn, right? We're talking about buff, meaning it stays in play until deactivation or defeated kind of thing, right? Which is Sang and Yuan Xiao. Right, so without further ado, let's get into battle. We'll see how Shadowfire clears this bi-weekly stage. Right, so we'll be expecting a lot of stalling, I guess. Alright, so let's moving into the battle. We'll see. Okay, that's gonna be taking down all the mini mobs there for their full attack. Right, so one thing that I always encourage players to do is, let me just pause this for a moment. One thing I always encourage people to do is that for bi-weekly battle with a lot of mini mobs, right, if you are not stalling for any CD, right, it's best to spin to the best of your abilities, right, meaning that you're taking this chance to actually spin to the best so that you can practice your first batch 6 combos dissolve, or your first batch 7 combo dissolve, right? So as time goes by, right, you find that, oh, spinning 6 combos and 7 combos is really no problem to you at all, because you have been doing it every turn, and then, you know, it kind of becomes a habit. So in a way, it's practicing as you move along the stage. Alright, so we'll see how this thing goes. So I guess here you are pretty much stalling, right? So if you're stalling, I'll assume that you are stalling for Huang Zhong, right? Because you're probably gonna do the Huang Zhong Ieyasu combo, right? Which is you need to stall for 8 turns and stuff like that, right? So I'll be seeing a lot of stalling, but we'll see how you utilize Arthur's gameplay. Right, so as I mentioned just now, Arthur auto dissolves light runes, right? So the more light runes it dissolves, I think to the max 5, you get the maximum damage output, or the multiplier. Okay, battle 4, mini mobs, like a stronger mini mobs, I guess. Right, we'll see how you spin there. Okay, so that's the mob's gonna attack you, and that's gonna do a convert. Okay. At this point of time, you know, okay, let's go back for a moment. Right, you get attacked by the mob. Right, you get this 1 row of light runes. Right, so what do you do to these light runes? So basically, 1 row of light runes means there's 6 of it. Right, so a lot of players will probably, oh, it's just nicely in play, it's nicely in position for me to dissolve, so I shall not do anything about it. Right, so the fact that you have 1 row of light runes here, meaning you can kind of split them up into 2 combos, right? 2 sets of 3 light runes, right? So yes, you still dissolve the same amount of light runes, but there's an additional combo there, and then additional combo actually boosts up your overall damage output as well. Right, so what you can do here is these light runes, this 1 set of light runes, you can leave maybe the left side alone, and then you spin the dark runes down, and then put these 3 light runes above. Right, so that is 1 extra combo for you. Right, so stuff like this will actually improve your overall combo. Right, we were talking about first batch here, right? Arthur, I understand that you can kind of get a lot of sky drop because of all the auto dissolve and stuff like that. Right, but in this case, I'm talking about practicing your first batch dissolve. Right, so you can pretty much, you can see here, there is basically everything's aligned for you, right? Like these 3 earth runes here, these 3 heart runes here, the water runes can be here as well. and then there's a hard combo here, there's a dark combo here. Basically, if you were to let me spin this, I would probably get 7 to 8 first batch combo, right? It depends on how you break this big chunk of light runes here, right? So let's move on. Right, so you can see you left that light rune there as one big chunk, right? But of course, damage output will be there still, right? But in a sense of practicing over time, right? That's gonna be of help to you. Alright, so I guess Huang Zhong's up. You are waiting for Nathaniel, I guess, right? Because Nathaniel, if I remember correctly, is not of max skill. Right, he's at CD 12 or something. So you probably have to wait for him, right? If you are using him. Okay, this is kind of a good spin, right? But the problem is, okay, I think a lot of players have this mindset, right? That since all colors possess effect of light runes, I'll just dissolve whatever's on the board. I'll leave that corner of 3 light runes alone, right? Because it auto dissolves, and you probably pray that you get Skyjo and stuff like that, right? So let's briefly go through how Arthur works, right? Let me find my Arthur. Okay, there we go. Right, so a lot of people misunderstand how Arthur is being played. Right, so let's take a look here. Right, so if you take a look at the leader skill here, so upon completion of moving and dissolving runes each round, right, all light runes will explode until there is no more light runes on the screen. The more light runes exploded, the higher the attack to the max ×2. Additionally, for 5 light runes exploded. Right, so I think a lot of players are going for that. Since there is 3 on the board, I'll leave it alone. I'll spin other colors, and then maybe like 2 other light runes drop, and then it auto dissolve. There's 5. I get that maximum multiplier. But the thing about Arthur is that the other attribute that possess effect of light, they don't possess 100% effect of light. They don't possess 50% effect of light. Right? In fact, you can look at the leader skill here. Right? All runestones possess 15% effect of light runes. That's very little, right? 15%. We're not even talking about 50 here, right? 15% is very little. So I would say that you go for the dissolve of that initial batch, that 3 light rune that pops out every turn, right? And then the more you dissolve on your board, the more light runes, there is more space for light runes to drop, you know what I mean? So overall, you still get that additional damage output because you dissolve light runes, right, which is 100% effect compared to other attribute which is only 15%. Alright, so let's move on. Okay, Nathaniel's up. So I guess you're using this for battle 7, right? Because we have this mob here, 2-second movement time and above 6 combos. Right, so here we will see how you spin. Right, so a lot of players tend to do this because like, oh, I have like 3 extra rolls, right? Like I'll just spin to what the amount of combos I need, and then that's all. Right, so what I usually suggest, right? Practice, as I mentioned, practice. Right, so you spin from the bottom, right? So you go for that horizontal 3 dissolve, right? So that actually trains your spinning as well. So you can do from the bottom or from the top, it doesn't matter, right? From the bottom seems more comfortable for me, right? So of course it is based on personal preference, but here, right, you want to try to do the 3 horizontal dissolve, right? It trains you, and you can do more combos as well. As you can see, if you spin like this, it's all over the place, right? Of course it doesn't really matter because for Arthur, in Arthur's case, all runes possess effect of light. But if you were to play a mono setup, then that's gonna be a bit different. Alright, so just a small thing to note, right? It's not really that big of a deal, right? But if you want to improve your spinning and stuff like that, you might want to go for a different kind of spin in the future, right? If you're using Nathaniel or maybe Chaos. Chaos is free movement, right? Starters. Okay, so here is the main part of the video, right? The boss randomly converts one rune into light runes, right? And then we have an anti-initial dissolve for light runes. So I guess you pick Arthur in this case is because you have this auto dissolve for Arthur, right? So you don't really have to deal with the light runes, right? That's my opinion. That's my thinking, right? Of the reason why you bring Arthur in this bi-weekly battle, right? So let's see how you're gonna do this. Okay, so you activate Arthur. Also note that you're not going to get the full Arthur effect because you're missing fire runes. Alright, so you're going to go for that Ieyasu. Okay, that's fine. Okay. And then auto dissolve away that light runes. And then you didn't get the kill. Okay. As I mentioned just now, right? Yes, you do get that benefit of that auto dissolve, right? So you don't really have to deal with that like a heck ton of light runes on your board every round. But the problem is light runes is the one that dish out the most damage, right? As I mentioned, other attribute only possess 15% effect of light. Right? So if you take a look at your previous board before you spin, right here, you notice how these light runes are being clumped here. And notice how you already have one light runes here. Right, so what you can do is you can see that this heart rune here is so close to each other. Basically, one movement you have 4 heart runes aligned. Right, basically, you probably hold this earth rune here. You drag it to the left. You align the heart runes, right, and then you come down, bring this light rune over. Right, so you're gonna put this over at where these 2 dark rune is. Right, these 2 light runes is gonna be here. Right, so when you dissolve this first batch of heart runes, right, it's gonna drop and it's gonna align these light runes as a full attack. Right, so that will probably have settled this bi-weekly battle boss in one hit, right? Because dissolving light runes actually give you better multiplier than any other colors. Right, so you can see that unfortunately you did not do a stacking. Right, so stacking is one of the core tactics that Madhead are trying to push players to do now because of those maybe anti light runes in this case, and then they electrified the light runes and you have to dissolve the electrifying runes and stuff like that. Right, so they're going towards that direction, so I would say that you must start practicing your stacking. Right, so as you can see, you totally ignore the light runes. Right, and then you can see that auto dissolve, and then you didn't manage to go for the kill. Alright, so let me go back for a moment here. Alright, and then you can see that this is the best board for that stacking condition that I said just now. Alright, so what you can see here, this is a beautiful board. Right, don't mind the right side first. Right, so you can see here, basically you can do this, right, to align the heart runes, and then you will have 3 light runes here. Right, then leave the 3 light runes there, and then you can continue spinning all the other colors. First batch dissolve of heart runes, the light runes align. There is how you stack the light runes, right? Dissolving light runes but not dissolving them at first batch. Right, so there's one method you can do. Right, so at the end of the video, I'll go through a few styles that you can stack your runes, right, so that you can practice them in the future, and maybe perhaps you can do counter that for future stages. Right, so let's see how you're going to spin the last part here. Right, so you can see you totally ignored, right, really totally ignored the light runes, which is the one that actually gives you the best damage output for Arthur. Right, of course the second hit is going to definitely take down the boss there. Okay, so basically you can see that Hubble was not being used. Right, you did not touch Hubble at all. Right, so as I mentioned in the earlier video, in the early part of the video, right, Yuan Shao sung best booster cards for Arthur, right? So Shadowfire, if you have those 2 cards, right, maybe you want to pick one of the 2, right, and then slot them in Arthur team, you will definitely buff up your overall team damage. Alright, so let's move on to some stacking tips. Okay, so I'm back here in my own account, right? So I'm using Yogg Sothoth because that is like the slowest spin time that I can ever find. Alright, so let's take an example that you can't dissolve first batch of dark runes, for example. Alright, so one example, as I mentioned just now, was the middle. You do a border, you know, in the middle to cut off the dark runes, right, so that they fall down as second batch instead of first batch. Right, so what I mentioned is you can do this, right? You use the hard runes as the centerpiece, right, and then you put the remaining dark runes on the bottom, right? So you can see on top there's a hard runes, there is earth runes, so you can do that as well, and you can do this, and then basically you have yourself, you can dissolve the dark runes, right, and then let them fall as second batch. There is one way to do it. Right, so there is stacking using the middle row as a border. Right, so another way to do it is the Babylonian style. Right, for example, if you're playing Babylonians or you're playing King of Fighters and stuff like that, right, you can't do that because you need to do a row of 4 for Sky Job to happen, right? So for now, let's take it as an example. You can't dissolve first batch Earth runes. Right, what are you gonna do? Right, in the Babylonian case, right, you have to do that column of 4 because only when you do that you trigger the Sky Drop, right? So what you can do is you put one or two Earth runes on top and then the rest at the bottom, right? So what I mean is you can do this, right? So let's put it this way. Right, so you can see here you have yourself your column of water, your column of dark, your column of hard as your Babylonian Sky Drop criteria, right? And then after that, the Earth Room drops down as second batch dissolve, right? So that's how you kind of get rid of or dissolve your selected attribute runes on the second batch instead of the first batch. Right, so one more is pretty uncommon while self-spinning, right? Usually I use this for Time Tunnel, right? It's the mid stack, the pyramid stack, right? So what you can do is you align 4 runes in the middle on the bottom like this, and then you do a stack like this. Right, so notice how all this is gonna drop as second batch. Right, so like this, and then the rest falls down together like this. Right, so of course these are gonna be a few stacking techniques that I can think of, right, from the back of my head. So these are all very, very important techniques that players should learn, because nowadays skills, Madhead are implementing skills that require us to do stacking or dissolving runes on a second batch instead of a first batch, right? So practice all this, right? You can use your Yogg Sothoth setup to practice those stacking, right, on a 5 stamina stage or a 10 stamina stage, right? You won't spend too much of your stamina, right? So overall, just spin around and get used to the stacking, right? So that's my overall tips I want to give to you for this episode of Coach Me TOS. Right, so overall, that's all for today's episode, right? So thank you Shadowfire for sending in your video, right? So if you guys have any videos to send in, right, do follow the format that is on the screen right now, right? So with this being said, hopefully you guys enjoy this episode of Coach Me TOS. See you guys in the next episode. Bye bye.